Hello, hello. Oh, we lost him. He'll be
Oh,
back. I didn't even notice we lost him yet. Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
afternoon.
Welcome to a special episode of Palantalk. I'm Nick Parrow, co-founder of Banner and Backbone, joined by my colleague and co-host Shane Yer, founder of the Firebrand Project. And we are going to be joined here back again in a second with our friend and colleague Zev Shalev of
Yes.
narrative.org. Please smash that heart.
Yes.
Tech issues happen sometimes. But hey, good afternoon. Welcome. We're going to be talking about technofascists in the Epstein class, and Shane and Zev are going to have some really good talk back. We've got an article that we're going to be discussing of Zev's that he posted on, I believe, Friday or over the weekend. That's going to be really great to talk about around various members of the pedophile mafia,
I like
Peter
that.
Thiel,
Pedophile
Elon
mafia. Yep.
Musk. Yeah, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, they were part of PayPal. They were the PayPal mafia, so now they're the pedophile mafia. We got Zuckerberg, we got others. We're going to have a great discussion around it. Hey, all in the chat. Shane, how are you today?
I'm good, man. I think this is a really important discussion. I think that what we're seeing come out of Zev's work and his tireless efforts, among many others, but there's just so much in the Epstein files. And I was telling Nick before that, I think it's high time that I take a couple days myself and do a little digging here and contribute my efforts to this as well. There's a lot of context here, particularly reading this in terms of geopolitics and the name, and I think these files can be very useful in helping us put together exactly how far this scheme has progressed and how it's translated post Epstein. How has the network that Epstein built operating in the real world? And so, this is going to be a really important discussion, particularly this work that we're going to be talking today. This really documents how Thiel was brought into the fold, and it really shows that he appears to have been invited.
Yeah.
He was recruited, and Epstein saw the value in Thiel, and that's a really big puzzle piece that we've been trying to figure out, right? Is we know that Peter Thiel is the primeval techno-fascist. We know that.
Yeah.
We know that he fell in love with Curtis Yarvin's work. We know that he was, and maybe he is the co-founder of Palantir, but he is the beating heart of techno-fascism in the
Yes.
United States, around the world. And everyone kind of, works around him in some degree. He is really, I've long said, and, that he's de facto president, at least in some capacity.
Yeah.
He
He
just,
would be a shadow president in a
Mhm.
lot of ways. I could absolutely see that.
So, I think that this is really important, as well as, the work that they were able to, a narrative, and all the other folks over there working on this, they were able to actually reconstruct Epstein's equation on political control and his methodology for how he does and did what he did.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, and it all really goes to show, and I think what we can really demonstrate here more than anything else is that the level of institutional capture we're facing at this point
Yes.
is actually undeniable, and it's part of us needing to face exactly what our government has become, and whether it is in any capacity, even what we think it is. How much of our government still exists, and how much of it? How successful was Epstein in solving this equation for the United States government? And there's an argument to be made here that he solved this for America a while ago. And that is so important, right? I put out a note this morning and I said, if the case, and I said, basically, we're kind of asking the pedophiles right now to prosecute themselves. That's kind of what we're asking right now. And what we have an opportunity here to do with the Epstein files and this is maybe not necessarily see the prosecution we want, but to undeniably prove that they will never prosecute themselves and that the government is actively incapable of prosecuting the people involved because they have already captured the institutions. That needs to be 100% demonstratable for next steps to take place. It needs to be demonstratable and that this is that the institutional capture has occurred, that the safeguards are gone, and that we can make educated decisions on how to go forward with our democracy. Because there's a lot of decision paralysis right now. There's a lot of expectation that certain institutions might do something where if we can prove with these files that that's just not going to happen. That's really important because justice for not only the victims, but the victims of what Epstein has done, they go far beyond just the child rape. It's every single American. It's the middle class. The middle class are victims of Epstein. The entirety of American society, we are all victims of Epstein and the techno-fascist billionaire class. It's so important that we're able to demonstrate that, right? Like we have to demonstrate that because justice for the entirety of the system, not to mention the things we're talking about with the United Nations. This is bigger than America. This is just bigger. And there's, it just goes to show as well the importance of geopolitics in putting together what Epstein is doing, because America was a means to an end. America was the dollar. The dollar was the primary means of control of, of the economic system. To institutional capture of America is integral to the institutional capture of the global order. It's the first step. So this is where I just think that if you want to get everyone on board with what needs to happen, whatever that is, we got to prove. It's about the body of proof has to be so strong that, we need to be able to go to our governors and say, why are we even engaging with this government? It's completely dismantled. They're pedophiles. What's going on, right? Like there needs to be a stronger basis of fact to the point where Gavin Newsom can't ignore, for example, in California, that you're treating with pedophiles. So you're either a pedophile or you need to stop treating with pedophiles. The world, the global government, right? They need to realize that they're not even treating with the United States. They're treating with the criminal enterprise.
So I think what we've figured out with all of this, and Shane, you're going to be such a huge help in this. And hey, everyone who is seeing Zev Shalev's name on here, he had a power failure, which is why he sort of blanked out on us during the show intro. He is hoping it comes back online. We are going to continue our show either way. And if we do miss him, we will pull. If we do miss him today because of the power,
we'll get him back.
Don't worry. We'll get him back and we'll reschedule for another day with Zev. Zev and I talk a lot. And Shane and Zev are hopefully going to be doing some research together around this, because you're right. What we're producing as citizenry right now, and this is where we come in as Shane and Nick, but also we come in as the whole community, is we are providing the body of evidence that can then be presented to state attorneys generals and others and legal teams to go after people in real time and say, hey, you are the problem. You're doing this X, Y, and Z, which is illegal, which is violating these laws. And this is the documented body of proof that we have showing that you have violated these laws and these sanctions hypothetically, or things like that for businesses that may be doing illegal transactions to Russia. So things like that. The body of proof that we're providing also includes the Epstein files, because so many of these men who are both technofascists or technocracy pro adjacent folks are also in the Epstein files. And that's where I'm going to shift us over scene wise, anyways, on our screen, because I want to get Zev's article up, even if we don't have Zev right now with us. Shane, I want to get your analysis because I know you read through the article, and I want to get your feedback
Yeah,
right now, anyways,
for
on
sure.
what you've seen on the first article that we will be showing, which is going to be from February 13th. It is the how Jeffrey Epstein connected Donald Trump's 2016 campaign to Russia, Peter Thiel. And I think we need to understand this really well. So it, for everybody to see on screen, on the wall, it all big and zoomed in. There's a name to get your thoughts on as we're going through, which you
Sure.
can see right here is Tom Barrack. I want to
Yeah,
get your feedback on Tom Barrack as we go through, because that's also a name that you mentioned pre-show that you wanted to talk about.
yeah,
Um, and so let's talk about Tom Barrack as we go through. I'm going to skip over Leslie Groff herself because that's Jeffrey Epstein's scheduling assistant. And that's not the important name in all of this. Who we're really looking at are Vitaly Churkin and Peter Thiel.
right. Yeah,
And I want to get your thoughts on this feedback about how Peter Thiel, who is also part of the Facebook board, RNC keynote speaker, $1.25 million donor to Trump,
yeah.
doesn't state whether they met each other or not, but they are both in Epstein calendar. So your feedback and thoughts.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that really stuck out to me in this article, in particular, was the way that Epstein facilitated a relationship between Belyakov and Teal, as well as with Churkin, which we'll go into as well. But the interesting part about here is this is, I was telling kind of Nick before the show that we always knew that Teal was an integral part of this. And you could even argue at this point that Teal is de facto president in a certain capacity. Palantir's in the Treasury, Palantir's in the Department of Justice, Palantir's in the military on every single level, Palantir's in our Social Security, Palantir's everywhere, right? So they've successfully integrated Palantir in there. And so the question was Teal part of the larger plan, or was he brought in? And this pretty conclusively answers the question that Teal was invited in to this. Teal was seen as valuable. He was doing his own thing until Epstein decided that he was valuable to the master plan. And that's where, you start to see that there was collusion between Russia and Epstein long before Teal was even part of this. But
Yes.
Teal's connections, particularly through the Founders Fund, through his ability to influence tech on a larger scale in the future in America, he was deemed important enough to be brought in here as a as a member of this cabal, right? So he was invited. And I think that when we look at that element where we're looking at him being not necessarily a core member of the beginning, but a special invitation because he is useful. And so, we know that Teal's had people killed. Teal is, he's diabolical in every way. But when you start to bring in, Churkin, and Churkin's background is discussed in this article essentially him being former FSB. He went and he made his money during the capitalism boom following the Soviet Union, like many Russian oligarchs did. In the chaos, they got control of some sort of rare earth element. In his case, it was material. It was aluminum. He went and made all his money in aluminum, became a powerful oligarch, and found himself involved in the Russian Ministry of Economics. It was the Russian Ministry of Economic Development. Okay, so Belyakov was getting Epstein visas. He got Epstein a visa to Russia. It was the Ministry of Economic Development. He demonstrates this in the article. But the timeline is also very interesting to me because this is all happening in 2015, and Crimea was in 2014. Okay, so at which point, this is after Russia becomes a pariah, right? Russia became pariah status after the annexation of Crimea. That's really when it was kicked out of the G7, the G8 at the time. It was, banned from the Olympics, and so they really became the pariah state following that. So now we also have to add that layer to this analysis that we're doing here of now Russia's involvement in the United States, typical diplomatic, avenues are no longer, available in the same way that they were prior. So this reaching out to Thiel, we're reaching out at a point of aggression, particularly towards, the United States. The United States, they really chose not to involve themselves in Crimea, which was interesting. But I kind of digress here. I think the most important thing we see with Belyakov is that this is where Thiel gets introduced to the Russian aspect here, where we have to always kind of draw connections because we know motivation and we know how they work. We know Peter Thiel. We know he's a all-in kind of guy. So if he thought that getting in bed with the Russians plan to essentially create a proxy state in the United States, then he's going to do that. And Epstein facilitated that, right? So this starts with Belyakov, and we continue to see that develop later into, got my notes here, in 2015. They met in June of 2015. And we see that relationship really continues as Epstein starts to introduce Thiel to multiple people. Just in those articles, we have, like we said, Tom Barak Churkin comes in as well, who was the ambassador to the UN for Russia. And so, we see that actually after Churkin dies in New York, which I thought was interesting. Anytime anyone dies in New York, I think we need to think that's
we need to look at it
because
the mob still exists.
This is where Trump is most powerful. Let's not forget that it all starts in New York for him.
Yeah, that's where the mob still exists. Hold too much more of your analysis at the moment. Zev should be joining us again here in just a minute. His power is restored. And so he should be able to jump back into the stream here in a second. So I don't want you to give too much more analysis at the moment.
Yeah, no, for
sure. Because I want Zev to give his feedback for you. I want to like dig in just a little bit though on some of the things you said, because I think they're really interesting and really good points. This is really, someone asked earlier in the chat, is Putin the head of the snake? Well, probably. At least one of the heads. This is not a single-headed snake. A hydra has more than one head. Hydras have more than one head, and if you cut one head off, it respawns with more heads. So
there he is.
Yes.
We got Zev back.
Zev, welcome.
Everybody, hey, how are you guys? Sorry.
We're doing really well. Before we go too far, I'm going to switch us back to our previous scene. Zev, can you introduce yourself just real quick for anyone who might not know you? I know pretty much everybody does, but I want to make sure you introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. So I do narrative.org here at Substack. It's been around for 10 years, shockingly, covering all things about democracy and the attack on democracy, the war on democracy, and everything that's happened in the last 10 years involving Epstein and Trump and everything else. So before that, I'm an executive producer of TV shows and a journalist. So, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Ev. So we've started in on your article just a little bit from the 13th on the Epstein connection to Peter Thiel and Russia.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And we are on Palantalk, which obviously Peter Thiel owns a company named Palantir. And we like to talk about technofascists, and we like to talk techno-fascism is our slogan here, because it's technofascism we're fighting against. So we wanted to get your analysis and your feedback on Shane's analysis too, because I think you two are going to have a really, really strong discussion here around what you've written, especially around Vitaly Churkev
and Belyakov.
Yeah, those guys are interesting characters, right? And they came out so quickly in the Epstein files. Those two names just pop out so much if you've been covering the story, investigating the story. It's hard to imagine that that's not a significant find, that Thiel is connected to both of those people, as is Epstein, as is Trump. Well, Trump not so much to Belyakov, but Trump to Churkin for sure. So, I don't know the guy. I guess you guys never knew the guy either. You're probably too young. But Vitaly Churkin is not someone you'd run into unless you were a spy. It's just he was a handler. That's what he did. He was good as his job as the UN ambassador, but he was also for Russia, but also very much a spy handler and a recruiter for them.
Yeah. It's interesting too when you see the UN involved, because, those of you guys who know me, I also am very kind of dialed into geopolitics. I've been following closely what's going on with the UN in particular. We're seeing a push by the United States.
I lost you now. I don't know what that is. You froze.
Oh.
Someone froze. I don't know if
we can still see you.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you're good now.
And so in terms of what's going on with the UN, the United States trying to bankrupt the UN with the Board of Peace, all of these things, right? So anytime I see the UN involved, you going back farther, right? It's clear that there was some sort of larger scale plan, and your article where you were able to share his equation, right? And just for those of you who know, there was 4 parts of this plan that on this whiteboard. There was power, plants, deception, and what was known as appears. But essentially, these are the 4 elements of power, right? In a larger scale dynamic, this is how you control everything. And if you're looking at a guy who's trying to control everything, understand it's very clear in the Epstein files, all these names. This is not a plan to control the United States. The United States is a means to an end. The goals are larger. So why are they trying to, get Thiel and everything he's doing? Why are we working with the UN? We recently had in France, one of the people as well was known to be handing documents to Epstein from the UN. It was reported on that last week. His name's escaping me, but where do you think, Zev? I mean, because my kind of take on this is that Thiel was being watched, but when he was deemed valuable to whatever scheme they were planning, it almost seems like he was kind of recruited, like Epstein was keeping tabs on Thiel.
And I think it's exactly what happened. I think they watch these guys. They look for people who are firstly compromisable, and Thiel is plenty compromisable from many things that we know about his private life. It's not that private, but nevertheless, it's pretty well known what he likes to do in his private life. It's all good for that, but it also means he might be a compromised target for any intelligence agency. And in the same way they assessed Donald Trump in 1987, Yuri Shvets told me directly, he's the former KGB mission chief in Washington, about how they found Donald Trump, recruited him, and made him one of theirs using the mice model, which is money. I can't even remember it now, but it's the four categories that the Russians or most intelligence agencies use to recruit intelligence assets. You might know this, Nick, better than me, but the reality of it is, why would you introduce Thiel to Belyakov in the way that they did, unless you were trying to bring him in as an asset? And more than that, I think Thiel was predisposed to that. He has some Rothschilds funding in his ventures. The Rothschilds also show up in the Epstein funding money trails. So it's not surprising that, and they're very connected to Russia, that Peter Thiel would have found himself in that orbit where he's being sort of recruited, whether he was knowingly recruited or unwittingly, I don't know, but it was certainly looked to me like he was aiding them in some way or another with funding or other ways of getting Trump elected.
Yeah, my understanding as well, as I was reading, is it appears that Epstein reached out on behalf of the Rothschilds originally to Thiel to be that bridge, and so that's in 2016, right? And so we know they started writing Project 2025 and 2022. And things like that. But this Heritage Foundation, I've long at least been the belief that the techno, PayPal Mafia and the Heritage Foundation, they were not intrinsically linked originally. They grew in isolation and they were fused for a common goal. And so
Russia,
yes,
it's so easy when you just like peel back the, it's not that, you look at all the connections on a small level, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but when you pull back, and you just look at the motives of Russia and who the benefits for Russia and why they'd be wanting to attach themselves to the Heritage Foundation and Peter Thiel and the Broligarchs and Peter and Epstein and all these other things. It just, the only people with that kind of motive and that kind of money and that kind of experience are the Russians. There's just very little else. You add those dots and it becomes very difficult to sort of see it any other way. But I interrupted you, and I'm sorry about that because you were asking a good question, I think. But I'm sorry to get in the way.
No, it's okay. We get excited when we feel like we're talking about things we're passionate about. So that's good. I mean, but yeah, I think it looks like they were really establishing that Epstein, and we know he's the glue, right? We know he's been the glue. We know that his job was essentially to facilitate all of these different relationships. I thought it was interesting too when you look at it, because I do think there was a fusion, and I do think after Epstein died, we saw further kind of tightening between these groups. And it's really one of those things too, that relationship with Thiel, extremely valuable, was Zuckerberg, that you gain access to Zuckerberg through Thiel.
Who also gain access to JD Vance.
Yes, JD Vance and Zuckerberg, and Thiel had his own network. So I think they would have been probably certainly aware that Thiel had some sort of plan back in 2016, and that he was furthering his own goals. So in they had actually kind of aligned with the more Democratic camp in terms of the Democrats at the time. They were funding,
Thiel?
Thiel, correct.
I don't think so. I mean, he was the spokesman for, a delegate at Trump's
That's true.
not inauguration, convention, and he was a keynote speaker there. I mean, traditionally, these guys have always been a little bit democratically inclined, at least publicly. But in reality, when you look at the funding from Mark Zuckerberg and others to conservative causes all the way through the years, it was a bit of a myth that they were pro-democracy. They told us that, when they launched Facebook and all that, and they were during the Arab Spring, they kept saying, that Facebook and Twitter and all these things were going to be tools for democracy building. But in reality, they were not. There were good surveillance tools, and there were good tools for suppressing uprisings. And I think that was more true to the spirit of Zuckerberg and all these other guys.
True. I mean, I tend to think too, when I look at them treating with Gavin Newsom, but at the same time, like, Gavin Newsom's just as bad as a lot of these guys. He's got his own motivations, right? So I wanted, one of the questions I had for you too is, when you're looking at the Churkin situation, I thought it was interesting that, and I kind of mentioned this to Nick, Churkin dies in New York. Okay, so Churkin, Russian ambassador to the UN, dies in New York. Only it was a couple years after, these
2017. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, this is only, a couple years after this relationship starts. And with Epstein's death too, how much of this do you think Churkin was cleaning house? Do you think
the Russians were cleaning house? I think they killed him. and they killed 6 other Russian diplomats in the 2016 to 2017 era who would have been in the know on Epstein and Trump, and that was not an acceptable risk, I think, for the Russians. So they assassinated all these key leaders in their diplomatic world. It's just the way the Russians work. And I've often had this, I don't know if that's what you're leading, but the same thought has always crossed my mind. Was Epstein eliminated because, if he's been eliminated, there's always that question, but if he was eliminated, was it because he was, too likely to sing? And in fact, we know in his dying days, he was already sharing names and details of what he knew, and that would have been unacceptable to the Russians and the Israelis, frankly. And I can imagine both sides wanting to eliminate him in whatever way they can. Now, there's also credence to the fact that he could not be dead. I think there's also a reasonable. I know that's an internet rumor that's being inflated right now, but we have not seen his death certificate, and until I've seen his death certificate, I don't see why we know that he's dead necessarily.
Okay, so before we go any further, I want to ask about that because Lev broke some news last night too about another individual who is missing. Smirnov, I think Alexander Smirnov was it?
Yeah.
He was the supposed informant on the Burisma case for the Biden impeachment shenanigans.
Yeah, that's right.
And he sort of just disappeared from his prison, and nobody knows where he is.
He went to leave. Obviously he's been released or escaped or something, and they are just not acknowledging that. And obviously Lev would know. He would know Alexander Smirnov, if that was his first name. But I think he would know him because they were working on the same project, that Burisma file. So it's interesting.
So looping that into the Epstein stuff is because we don't really, and I don't want to conflate any like weird rumors or conspiracies. Like, we're not here for conspiracies. And there is no proof of death from Jeffrey Epstein, and anything that comes out of this administration has to be questioned, both this time around and the previous time that I was in office, because we don't know any truths from them. Is from all of the documents that you have looked at, from all of the evidence that you have seen, because you have gone through more than almost anybody at this point of the Epstein files, other than maybe the CIA or the FBI. Like, maybe other than,
I think there's a lot of great people doing a lot of good work, but yeah, I think the FBI has probably been through more than I have because they've extracted so many. But a lot of people.
Do you think there's credence to the idea that he would be alive, that Epstein would be alive?
Yeah, I think absolutely. There's a possibility that that's the case. And I've spoken to Mark Epstein a little bit. He's always believed that his brother was killed, but he also says he could not get a death certificate, which he would be the only person able to get that officially, being a member of the family. I mean, there was an autopsy, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was Jeffrey Epstein's body they were autopsying. I mean, there's rumors about two vehicles moving out of the MCC facility that night. There's clearly a very difficult situation. No one knows how he would have committed suicide in a cell like that. So something else might have happened in that cell, because it certainly wasn't suicide.
And the videos that they always they've released around the night of his death were clearly edited. Like, we saw the edit marks in the video. They removed 3 minutes or something of footage.
And in the stuff that they did move, that people have uncovered, you can see some things moving on the sidelines. It could be a prisoner. It could be a guard. There's some movement in those minutes that they cut out, but it's not clear enough. The fact that the guards both fell asleep, the fact that no one checked in for all those hours, Bill Barr's alleged meeting with Epstein days earlier at MCC has also been very suspicious to me. I know he's denied it. I know the record has disappeared, but I remember clearly seeing in the early days of that investigation that there was a record of a Bill Barr. It wasn't signed in as Bill Barr. It was another name, but it was someone Barr signed into MCC that day. So. It's unusual. It's unusual for the Attorney General to go and meet up with a prisoner at MCC. It's just not something that would happen. If there's any credence to that, if that turns out to be true, that will explain a lot. Barr, of course, also worked for the Israelis. Was recruited by the Israelis to be the Attorney General, and of course was a cover-up guy for all sorts of things before, for Mueller, for Iran-Contra. Certainly wouldn't be surprising if he was a cover-up guy for Epstein as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to tell, and I think too, like, one of the things I think that is often kind of missed here is I feel like there is a connection between Israel and Russia that is really under discussed, right? Like, because the migration of Ukrainian oligarchs as well as Russian oligarchs to Israel, ratio is pretty staggering, right?
It was a purposeful migration too.
Like, why are they all going, to Israel? And we know that Israel in Mossad, and we've seen plenty of evidence as well that they're linked to Epstein. So, the thing that's the real struggle here as well is just to say, like, who is the institutional capture of the United States? Is that through Israel? Is it through Russia? Or are they on the same team? Do you think that they are effectively the same team at this point? Do you think that they're working towards a similar goal? Or do you think that they kind of come from different places? Or was Epstein?
No, they're basically aligned. I mean, you've got
right.
I think of the Kremlin sort of as a different thing than Russia or Moscow. I think of the Kremlin as a fusion between Israelis of Russian origin and the traditional Kremlin power structures that run Russia. The migration. Many other, the most extreme theory of this, and I don't think this is that extreme, is that the fall of the Soviet Union was a bit of a ruse, that they collapsed it in order to trick the West into believing that they could be trusted, and that they moved, enormous assets out of it. The refuseniks, which were supposedly Russian immigrants of Jewish origin that had been suppressed in Russia, truthfully, they were used to bridge a lot of espionage operators into the United States. That's why you got the Russian mafia launching in Brooklyn. That's why you have so many, Jewish Russian, let's call them mobsters, for lack of a better word, in the United States and in Israel. In Israel, it's more pronounced. You've got a much smaller community there, and about 20% of the population is now Russian, which is much higher than it used to be. They've had an outsized influence because of the oligarchs like Semyon Mogilevich and others who have moved to Israel as well, who are billionaires. They've influenced politics there as well, and they've facilitated the rise of Bibi Netanyahu and the collapse of democracy in Israel. So Israel, as a nation, is going through very much what America has gone through and is going through, a real attack on its democracy and a takeover by a criminal, engineered mafia state that is really what Russia is today, and what Israel's becoming, and what America is becoming. There is, and some of it, the Jews carry a lot of weight on this because people think it's all Jews, but there's a real distinction between the Jews that come out of Russia, which are Chabad Jews, which are very different kind of, almost a sect of the Jewish religion. They're not even the same as this broad idea of what the Jewish religion is. And in Israeli Jews and to a large extent, and American Jews are much more liberal, have a very different perception of the Chabad movement, and actually, quite opposed to the Chabad movement in many ways. So it's people like to lump all the Jews together and say, it's a Jew's fault. It's not as simple as that. It's much more complicated, and even more complicated than I'm saying it, because then you get into all these other subsects like the Baal religion and all these other things, and when you look at who's got the power in America, it's in terms of Jews, Jeffrey Epstein or Jared Kushner or Lutnick, all of those guys, they're Chabadniks. They come from the Chabad side of the Jewish religion, which is only about 10% of American Jews are Chabad Jews, and the
I'd
rest
be
are.
interested
Sorry, go
if
ahead.
Stephen Miller was one too.
Yeah,
Specifically.
almost every single one of them, guaranteed. If they come from Russia, if they have a Russian background,
His
they're part
family's
of Chabad.
Belarusian background, so I would assume so. He has a very similar background to my family's story. Like, came from Belarus, went to New York, and then somewhere else. While my family stayed in New York, his went to somewhere in Pennsylvania.
Who's this?
And
Sorry.
Stephen Miller,
Oh yeah, yeah.
his
They
family.
all have a very similar footprint, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Like Barry Weiss is another one of them, and I've never encountered any of these people before, and suddenly they've emerged as these power brokers only because the Chabad network is massive. It covers every country in the world. It's often interconnected with money laundering, child trafficking, some really terrible things that it's known for. And they don't care that they're giving the other Jews a bad name because they don't like the other Jews either. So for them, it's sort of like it's a it's a win-win to have all the Jews being targeted.
So before we go too far, there was a question in the chat. I want both your answers on this one, if we can. Is from our friend B from B's Free Verse True Verse was they're curious about what we think of the potential of Jared Kushner being groomed to replace Epstein.
Well, I think that's a great question. I mean, I don't know. I don't know a lot of the names, but I do know a lot about Jared Kushner. I've spent a lot of time looking at Jared Kushner, and I think Jared Kushner is absolutely performing a very similar role to what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Epstein was moving around the Middle East. He was treating with these, Gulf state kings and like the princes and the in the UAE. He was doing all these things that Kushner is doing, and I wonder. And this is a question for Zev. Do you think Affinity Partners is just another reskin of what Epstein was already doing with his companies? I mean, it seems very similar. I would say
I don't think it's necessarily a reskin, but it's a very similar kind of company. Jared would love to be the head of the mob in the United States, which is really the job you're talking about. I think it's currently held by Witkoff. I think that's probably the leader, and I think he's trying to groom Jared. Jared, of course, is not the same kind of leader you'd normally think of as a mob boss.
He's a wet noodle.
Because
he's a pretty wet noodle.
He's just not very aggressive or intimidating, I guess, and maybe he is in real life, but he's got the wrong kind of tone, voice. He speaks like a wimp. He's got this very sort of soft way of carrying himself. I don't know if he'd inspire fear in his mob friends, but he's certainly being groomed for that. I mean, that's certainly what they would love to make him, and he'd love to do it, I think. Whether he'll have the respect of all the other mob bosses is I don't know.
Yeah, I think
but I do think that Witkoff is the guy right now who's running the ship. Maybe Ivanka has more opportunity to lead the organization than Jared. But you've done lots of great work on Jared, and your instincts are totally, I think, are absolutely right. That there's so much symmetry between Kushner and Epstein in terms of the Saudi connection, in terms of their connections to the tech world. Or you can almost map the two nodes on top of each other, and they'd be very, very similar.
Yeah.
So here's a question too. Going into this is, we know that there were, say, 1,000 or 1 million mentions of Donald Trump's name in the Epstein files, unredacted version that Congress got to see.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe other names were included in that initial search, not just Donald Trump, but family members and associates such as Jared Kushner, to remove entire files before they were ever visible?
We haven't seen. I think maybe they keep saying that we've seen. Was it 6 million? Let's say 3.5 million. There's no ways. I've seen 3.5 million files in those folders. I mean, Maybe there's a few 100,000, maybe a couple of 100,000 at most. I've not seen anyone produce 3.5 million files. Now, let's assume that they're telling us the truth, but we shouldn't. I mean, they just don't tell us the truth. Let's say there's another 3 million out there. I don't even buy that, because when you look at the amount of video that make up the bulk of the, I think it was 300 gigabytes or something. We estimated it before all of this broke. There's so much. That's so much data. There's so much video. There's so much real evidence there that would have been that is not being presented to us. We've seen like maybe 500 tiny clips of video that basically show us nothing. Where is the rest of the stuff? This was a professional grade 24/7 monitoring operation that had pinhole cameras in every wall and was recording and transferring copies to Wexner. How is it possible that we've only seen 500 little clips? There's a lot of information, obviously, and that could involve anybody. But it's also not just the video monitoring; it's the audio conversations, the secrets that were traded, the deals that were made. I think it could be even more damaging than seeing a famous figure with a younger woman or whatever it is. I think that's sort of baked in. But the kind of astonishing things that we're finding out, like the stuff I posted today about Lutnick buying a house from Epstein, the mansion, for $10.
His neighbors in New York, didn't he literally own the building right next to Epstein's
it was actually all
townhouse?
Wexner's house. The whole thing was Wexner's compound, and they sold Lutnick the thing for $10, and $7 million on the side in money laundering. And then that's as suspicious as fuck. I mean, you can't have,
dude, I know.
Like that's the Commerce Secretary.
He's that's like, the guy. It's like a hotel adjoining door was what I thought in my head. Like I
have the same feeling. I wish I could show you this picture, because I have this photograph from Google Maps, and I posted it on the site today, of the two houses from above. And it just looks to me like in that third floor, or the fourth floor, whatever it is, the fifth floor, I don't know, there is an interconnected door in there. I'm almost 100% sure. I don't have a way to prove it, but
Ellie's looked into it too previously about the steam tunnels that connect these various homes that are used as servants passages, or were used as servants passages during the robber baron times, and they're still there. Like all sorts of
the backyards were joining. I mean, you could have gone from backyard to backyard into the other person's house, and no one would have a clue. So if you're this is the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, which we're discovering just in the last 24 hours, what a crooked company that was, and how nothing was done about it. But the Russian mafia ties, the money laundering, for that to be right next door to Jeffrey Epstein is like a operational and economic engine for any spy operation. I mean, it's just, it's obviously suspicious. It's more than suspicious. It's whatever
yeah,
as close as you can get to being guilty without saying you're guilty is where I go on that. It's ridiculous. This guy is still in power. He has to resign. He has to be forced to be fired. He has to be fired or resign, because if he stays there, we're done. I mean, we know we're done in some ways, but the Russian mob has taken over the executive branch of the American government. I mean, could not be a worse situation than we're facing right now in America.
I mean, you could even argue that they're in the Supreme Court, right? You could even argue they're in the Supreme Court. Like we know Thomas, or not Thomas, is it Thomas who took his Russian cruise? Took his Russian cruise all those years ago. We
should be really asking about Leon Black and the other guy who's right around them. His name is escaping me. I think there's another one.
Schwartzman from BlackRock. There's another one.
Probably him too. Yeah, anyone from BlackRock needs to be.
Larry Fink,
Larry Fink's another one, and all of them are so in 1987. That's how far back Leon Black and Donald Trump go. They went to Russia together. Sorry, 1996. They went to Russia together. On a government-sponsored, mob-sponsored trip to basically get Donald Trump out of financial ruin and get a lot of money from the Russians. They were basically given, I think, the equivalent of $450 million to Donald Trump. And Leon Black's on that trip, you know.
And
He was
Leonard
not
Leo, the other name, Leonard Leo.
Oh,
Yeah.
Leonard Leo, yes. And I don't know if that's a Russian. I haven't seen the Russian ties to Leonard Leo, but you know, he's obviously corrupted the Supreme Court almost single-handedly, as you're pointing out.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
have
So
one more thing I'd like to point out, because I
okay.
know, Nick, you got to wrap this up.
Yeah,
but,
let me do that, and then I'll get us set for our promotions
off.
for ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, and then maybe you can always like send me a message, or we can chat offline about, you know, what you think about
Love
this
to continue this conversation.
But,
Yeah, anytime, guys. I'm more than happy to.
You should come back next week if you're not busy. We can do another one.
I'd be happy to
figure it out. So, what do you think? I think this is very interesting. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, we saw the use of Vectis PMCs are now being deployed into the DRC to fight M23. And the first thing I thought about this is the Wagner model. This is exactly how I would expect Russia to operate in a region. And I mean, I'm just like, a lot of things, if you look in parallel too, and this is for everyone in the audience as you're looking this, right? We can all be investigators in our daily lives. Look for parallels in how the United States government is acting now and what's going on. This shift to a privatized model using all of these basically shell companies, whether it's a PMC model or it's an economic model, this is all very Russian. And it's really hard to not see the alignment of KGB, FSB methodology in how the United States government is acting. So, I mean,
because they've taken over the branch, they've taken over the executive branch. The Russians are everywhere, and we're mimicking them in our foreign policy. We're mimicking them in our intelligence operations. We're mimicking them in almost everything, and so that's not surprising. This is how these guys roll. They're going to tell us this is how it's going to work here. That's why there's going to be enormous pressure in the elections to get a free and fair result out of the elections in November.
Yeah,
I didn't know that about Invictus being there, by the way. That's really interesting. Not Invictus.
It's very interesting.
Who's in there? What's the name of the company? What's the name of the company?
VECTUS.
Vectis.
And
Eric Prince. Sounds like an Eric Prince thing. That's the kind of stuff he loves.
So, Zev, as we close out here, give us your last final thoughts and then shamelessly promote yourself.
I will just encourage everyone to keep digging into the Epstein file and keep the pressure up on the people who should be resigning. I mean, the Epstein file is probably the only thing we have right now that is got broad public support and that can bring down this government. And it's urgent that this government be brought down. I think everybody who should be phoning their Congress people, demanding. Today is a good example to be demanding that Lutnick be fired or resign. He can't possibly continue to lead the Commerce Department. And you know, and as with all these criminal ties, he's Russian mob ties. He's now revealed all these previous SARs that had been buried around him. He's fraud investigations, money laundering investigations. This guy is about as bad as you can get. He shouldn't be in the cabinet at all. He should be in jail. And people should be using their voices to call your Congress people in whatever way, contact them in whatever way you can, and ask for his resignation. He absolutely should not be in that position anymore. So I'd say that's probably the best call to action I can give for people today.
Thanks, Zev. I appreciate that. And do not forget to subscribe to Zev Shalev at narrative.org. You can find him on Substack. You can find him on YouTube. He puts out a lot of really good stuff. Zev and I have gotten to know each other over the last couple of months, and I trust what he is doing and the work that he is putting out. And I believe all of you should too. So go support Zev if you don't already. Shane, real quick for yours, and I'll power through mine real quick right after.
Yeah.
Shamelessly plug yourself real quick.
Yeah. So guys, I do a lot of things. I like to do this investigation. I like this kind of stuff. Right now you're seeing a lot of, I do geopolitics. So I'm trying to tie it all together. Right now it's more important than ever. We're seeing Europe take a lot of action on the Epstein files. We're seeing a lot things going around the world. We're seeing this model, like we talked about this with Vectis Global going into the DRC. We're seeing it's really important. Tom Barak, I'm actually going to take a 2-day hiatus here after this conversation. I'm going to dig into the Epstein files myself.
That's a good one. If you're going to do Thomas Barrack, that's a good one.
Tom Barak. Oh, yeah. We've got connections, and we see them doing things all around the world now. Geopolitics.
If you guys aren't connected on Signal yet, we'll get you two connected so that you can have a discussion.
I've actually got a good file on him, so I'll share what I have.
Dude, I'll go in there. I'll contribute my little brain. I've been apprehensive because I'm like, I don't know, but I think this version of the files, what I've read with you guys, this is really significant. And like, Zev said, guys, we need to use these files because regardless, we can establish legitimacy, whether the claim is the United States, government is effectively the Russian mob and we need to make a decision, or, whatever the case may be. It's super important, and we can tie all this together. So if you want that geopolitical angle, as well as some of the things that I'm working on, which will bring back a little bit more of that investigative angle, that part that I love as well, come check me out at the Firebrand Project. Make sure you subscribe to Zev and Nick as well. Zev's work is actually a lot of the cornerstones for my investigation. I like to launch from him because I really trust his work. And that's a thing that, there's not a lot of folks out there who do it right, do the due diligence. So please continue to support both of these guys. And, Zev, thank you for joining us today. And I look forward to our next discussion for sure.
Thank you so much. And I endorse your work as well. It's terrific stuff. The stuff you've done on Jared was really phenomenal. And I know there's a lot more. My brain's too dense right now to remember all this stuff. But if you're going to do Tom Barrack, that's a good one. I think you'll find it fertile ground. And we need more voices like yours, both of your voices, to be doing this kind of digging and really understanding what's in there. There's too many files and angles for just a few of us. It's got to be as broad as possible, and the crowdsourcing is really important. If you're watching at home, if you can get into the files, if you can find your niche, go dig in, find something. You will find something. There's so much there, and share it with the group, and it helps. It helps a lot more people to find out what's really went on with the Epstein files.
Yeah, exactly. And come support me at Sick of This Shit Publications. I'm working on masculinity topics, discussions around what it means to be not a shitty human being. You can also check out my awesome new merch shop.
That's really nice.
New merch sweater. It says, "Now you know, so you can grow."
Nice. I like that.
It matches my "Now you know, so you can grow" left-handed coffee mug and right-handed versions available, with our amazing picture on the back of me and Walter Ryan.
That's awesome, dude.
That's amazing.
The design for the faces is from Walter's daughter. Thank you for that. And the design for the shirt is from a friend of mine. She did an incredible design, and I really thank her for that. So come support us at Sick of This Shit Publications, doing a lot of really good work there. And then obviously come support Banner and Backbone. Here is where we do Palantalk discussions like this. We're going to be having Zev back again because this discussion is really, really, really freaking important. And everything we talk about here is really needed right now because, like Zev said, this is the only real angle that everybody agrees on is pedophiles are bad and we should not be run by them. And we're going to run that into the ground until all of them are gone, because that's our only option forward is to remove all of them. So help us over here at Banner and Backbone. Come support us. Come support my friends, Shane Yurik and Zev Shalev. Again, thank you everyone for being here with us. You'll see me again if you're watching this live here in just a couple minutes with Qasim Rashid Esquire for an intelligent masculinity discussion. And everyone, thanks for this coming and joining us. Zev, really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Sorry, I got stuck with the power failure, but it's good to be here. And I'll see you.
Not at all. Peter's probably trying to take you offline. He's in your Transformers.
Probably. It's happened before. Cheers, guys.
So thank you guys for being with us for the special episode of Palantalk, where we like tech.
No fascism.
Thanks, y'all.
Oh, well done.